Hello and welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon Kane. My cohort here to the left is going to be, or to your right, if you're watching the screen here, is going to be Seahawks. Brendan Nelson back in the house for the BNB show. How is it going, Brendan?
I'd say it's going pretty well right now, all things considered. I mean, Seahawks aren't playing this weekend, but the show goes on. It never ends.
Show goes on. There's always usually something to discuss and talk about as we go into this off season, and it's a kind of step-by-step process, but we are going to guide you through every step of this and get you guys all educated on what's going on, where we're at. And before we can get to anything with this team, and we got some news we're going to break. We're going to get to this news break in here in just a second on a couple of little items. But before we can get to really anything in this team in regards to Geno Smith or DK Metcalf, Brendan, before we get to the potential offensive lineman that many of the Hawk fans are hungry to go out there and sign on the open market to fix this offensive line, before we can get to any of that, we've got to clear some cap space. And we're not just able to walk into this saying we're sitting on this and we can go. So a big part of why I want to do this exercise today is because this is what the Seahawks have to do in starting out their offseason, isn't it, Brendan?
Yeah, especially the Seahawks. They are one of the teams that doesn't really have cap space right now. Over the cap says that they're about 27 million over. Now that number is probably not exactly accurate. There's probably a lot of things they're taking into consideration there that aren't going to be reflected in reality. Like they probably have more than the 53 players listed there. But I don't think there's any getting around the fact that this team needs cap space just to be compliant with NFL rules. So there's work to be done. Now, the work is there. It's pretty clear the things that you can do to clear cap space. So it's not like they're going to have to jump through a bunch of hoops just to barely get under the cap this offseason, but there is work to be done.
There is indeed. And so it's stuff that seems to be pretty straightforward. These are levers that John Schneider has been willing to pull in the past in order to create cap space. So when we're going through these aren't pie in the sky. They're very feasible and, as Brendan just said, very much likely. So we'll be getting to those. We'll be going player by player on the potential cap cuts you could make because, as Brendan just said, you got to create a lot of cap space here. It's not just about getting under the cap for that business to, signing draft picks and having the reserve fund for during the year. It's also about having the money to go out there and actually spend to improve this team. But before we get to that, let's get to a little bit of some minor breaking news, Brendan. What do we got leading off the top today as far as some of those items are concerned?
So over the last week, we've gotten a little bit of Seahawks news. It's been quiet, right? The team has been chill. And look, it's January, right? There's no reason you don't have to cut players now. You don't have to restructure players now. You can just sit back and relax and watch the playoffs for a little bit. But a few things. First is Brady Henderson had a tweet a few days ago basically saying the Seahawks have requested more interviews than what we know, but they haven't made them public. So if you as a Seahawks fan are sitting there wondering, oh, why didn't we get this guy? Why didn't we look at that guy? Why didn't we interview? We may have, right? So don't panic. The net is wider than what they say so far. So if you're like, oh, why haven't we looked at Doug Peterson? Why aren't we looking at Tanner Engstrand? What about, maybe you like Urban Meyer, maybe you like Chip Kelly. It's on the table. Just because you haven't heard the name concretely doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
Very true. And we know from last year with the head coaching search, Brendan, that John Schneider and what we can kind of glean from him in these kind of searches, he's done them very infrequently, is that he wants to lead with being very exhaustive and making sure that he's going through every possible candidate, that there's no stone left unturned.
Right. So a couple days ago, we did get name number 4. We had 3 names initially, which we talked about all 3 last week. And we added a 4th name to the list. I think we went to Chuck E. Cheese and reached into the ball pit and pulled out one of the kids in there and decided to give him an interview, I guess.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
I was going to go preschool, but that also works.
Yeah. They're not letting John Schneider back in that Chuck E. Cheese, by the way. He's got to stay 200 feet away at all times now.
That's a whole nother story, though, too. It's a second incident, Brendan, and we just don't talk about that here.
Yeah. So Grant Udinski, if you haven't heard of him, don't feel bad. Very few people have heard of him. 28 years old. I'm not trying to start controversy here, but he is young enough to be your child, Brandon. I'm not saying that he is, but I'm not saying he isn't either.
I mean, I was a little worried at first when I saw it. I went, wait, hold on a second. Right? That looks kind of familiar. What's going on here? Ooh, wait. Is that? Oh, hold on here.
I mean, I'm not saying he is. I'm just not saying he's not.
Hey, I was a wild young man. You know what I mean?
Right. Very. 3 years with the Vikings under Kevin O'Connell. I think Kevin O'Connell might be becoming the new Sean McVay, where everybody who touches him gets coaching opportunities that wouldn't be afforded to anybody else. His role on the Vikings staff was like assistant quarterback coach, assistant to the head coach. There was one role, it was called like head chief of special projects, which I've never heard of that role before with any other football coach. Chief of special projects. I don't know, maybe he was like mixing different flavors of Gatorade, trying to find the like perfect distilled Gatorade flavor for the players. I don't know, but that's what he was doing in Minnesota. He spent 2 years in Carolina before then. I don't know. It would be hard to rally around that hire, I gotta say.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one to me. Is the assistant of the assistant manager. It's like that old the office joke they used to make about that with with Dwight. But yeah, I don't. People have asked me about it a lot. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of requests. This is one of those ultimate ones you look at, Brendan, and you sort of shrug and you go, yeah, I mean, this is not the ideal from what we thought we'd be looking for here. It is a little bit more down the lane of like a grub a bit, where you're going from completely untested, and in a way that teams don't tend to make that kind of leap from this to that. Now, a lot of Hawk fans are telling me they think he's like a McVay. It's another one. McVay. Every young coach now is the McVay. I don't know, man. I think this goes against what I would have liked to seen done. If you're a team that was really going to lean into rebuilding next year, and this is just really more of them looking at like we're starting from a square one state of things, maybe it could make some sense there where we're looking for this guy to develop to become that great coordinator by the time we'll be ready to contend. But other than that, I don't see how it makes sense if right now you're trying to make something happen.
Yeah. One theory that I have is maybe they want to take a look at him to see if maybe they can get him as a passing game coordinator for the next OC. If the next OC doesn't have his guy that he's married to. I could see something like that. I'd be okay with that, right? But that would be about it for me. I don't think I can go higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can pull something like that off, that'd be great. But I agree. I don't think I could go higher, and that seemed like really a lateral move he'd be making anyway, from where he is with all of his extra titles as it stands in Minnesota. Say nothing of if a guy like McCown goes this offseason. Now, does he get a slide and add another title, add a fourth or fifth title to his resume on that for the current standing? But I would be shocked if they signed this kid. This would be pretty mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing in Minnesota is you've got like two different layers to get through before you get to play calling, because you have O'Connell, who's calling the plays, and then you have Wes Phillips, the actual offensive coordinator, above him, and then you have Udinski behind Phillips. So maybe he would look at it and go, hey, in Seattle, I only have one layer between me and play calling. Maybe he would prefer that. I mean, remember, he's not even the quarterback coach in Minnesota. He's the assistant quarterback coach.
That's right. Yeah, I guess you could maybe offer a little bit of that as far as the bump goes, but it's maybe it's possible. Throw him a little bit extra money, maybe too. That's enough to kind of offset it as well.
Yeah, like when I worked at Microsoft for a little while back in 2013, there were so many layers between me and the project manager. I saw him like once a month. I think that's probably this guy with O'Connell. He probably only sees O'Connell like once a month or something.
Probably, yeah. It's compartmentalized in Microsoft for sure. I'm part of that same mechanism at one point or another, and it's pretty wild how everything's just so very separated and cut off at times.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Udinski. I mean, if he ends up as the OC, I hate to say it, that would make me kind of feel like we couldn't find anybody good because nobody wants the job, and we just had to get somebody who would just be so over the moon to have it. They wouldn't even really question it,
How do you glean somebody who's so brilliant at play calling, who's that young, who's never done it before? I mean, do you put him in a simulator, like a Madden simulator, and start to see what he does and call him plays? Like, how do you possibly make that determination? I don't know. And that's the part that gets me so nervous about making these kind of calls on guys like this. This is even a more extreme version of Grubb. At least Grubb was calling plays at UW. Yeah, it's college level, but this even goes more extreme into that direction of things. So, you better be sure. You better be sure he's a genius, because this isn't a swing to the second deck, Brendan. This is you trying to knock it like out of the stadium.
Yeah, this is trying to hit a 700-foot home run.
Right. Put it out in the sound.
Yeah.
Like those Barry Bonds balls back in the day.
Yeah, and people keep talking about the McVay thing too. The thing to understand, 28-year-old coaches almost never get hired. Like McVay is probably the only one to ever get hired as a head coach at 28. If teams were trying to hire 28-year-olds to be a head coach all the time, I think a vast majority of them would completely fail, and McVay would be like the exception. So everyone, I know that people, their inclination is to just go, oh, McVay. It could be like McVay. It's like that just happened to be the one time it happened, and it just so happened to work really well. I don't think we take anything from that.
One of my mantras, Brendan, is don't count on the anomaly, count on the rule of thumb. That's trying to count on the anomaly that happened versus really what the rule of thumb is on these kind of hires and what you get with the coaches that are untested, unproven, and very, very young.
Right.
He's a baby for football.
Yeah. He was playing football in 2018, I think, for I can't even remember what the college was. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. Like, you can't hire somebody who doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
No,
sorry.
You need to have a wiki. Come on.
Yeah. Somebody should make one. Okay, so one other thing going on, apparently, although I believe it's unlikely to happen, Leslie Frazier is interviewing for the Cowboys head coaching job. So there is some outside chance we lose him, I guess, which would bum me out because I like Leslie Frazier.
I do. I think that they are definitely going for Deion Sanders. This is a little bit like the Vrabel thing where it just felt like a pure fit for him going to the Patriots the whole way. This feels like very much a Deion thing, but I will say they're not sometimes with a Frazier guy, he's been used in these interviews for the Rooney rule. And I don't think this is the Rooney rule. If you have a guy like Deion that you're looking at potentially being definitely going to interview at least and have a discussion with. So I don't know on that front. Maybe there is some real true interest there from his standpoint, but yeah, that'd be a big loss.
Yeah. I want the Cowboys to hire Kellen Moore. That'd be the best because every Cowboys fan would hate it. Like every single Cowboys fan. Yeah, they are. They announced they're interviewing him.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm rooting for that. There's not a single Cowboys fan that wouldn't want to jump ship to the Houston Texans at that point.
Yeah, that's Jerry's got it's sometimes just a clown show going there with that coaching situation, and just you're reminded of it every time they come up to have to hire somebody.
Yeah, and two more bits of news from earlier today. Two interesting things. Second interviews. We have second interviews with two guys now. First being Clint Kubiak, and I'll tell you, not that this means anything, a lot of the Seahawks people that I follow and know are starting to kind of feel like it's inevitable that it's going to be Kubiak. Not that means anything, but they're feeling like it's going to be Kubiak. We also are doing a second interview with Hank Fraley.
Kubiak's my guy. I think he's in many ways your guy too, absent being able to get a guy that we're not hearing mentioned out there that we would have liked in another place. We're in a position this offseason where there's not a plethora of candidates. And quite frankly, Brendan, as I've looked across the league, I think that in this pulling back of the defense, as we've seen the last couple of years, my instinct on this, let's see if you buy into this, but my instinct on this is that we're not seeing as many, just conveyor belt line of really bright young offensive minds that are sitting there ready to be at the forefront of being hired right now to an OC position. It's a little bit right now where the defense has taken some of that rope back. And so with that, it just feels like these last couple of years that's meted out then a lot of candidates that are not bad, but there just isn't as many, shining roses throughout the garden to go out there and pluck. And he is one of those kind of roses to me that you can pluck in that way. And so it makes a lot of sense that they go to this place. It would be great if there were more candidates, but do you not feel that same way, that this is not just that it's necessarily a bad year to hire, but that maybe there's isn't as many real great, brilliant binds out there as we've seen maybe in 19, if this was when we were looking, or 2021 if we were looking.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of those hot prospects were fool's gold, though. Right? Like,
yeah, it's true. Yeah,
I think teams are starting to learn, stop hiring Andy Reid disciples, stop hiring, for defense, Bill Belichick disciples. They're not good. Like they don't actually know anything. Who was the other guy who had the really bad coaching tree? Like everything that spawned off the tree was just bad. It was I think it might have been Gruden there for a while. He kept spawning off branches that just fell off immediately, but I feel like, a few years ago,
McVay's haven't done the best either.
Yeah, well, isn't O'Connell a McVay guy?
Maybe is he technically? I guess he's technically, yeah. I suppose
That's
so.
the
on
only
that
one, right?
Yeah, and then you got Staley, and you got Raheem Moore.
Yeah, I mean, Raheem Morris was a head coach a long time ago, before
He
McVay was.
yeah.
McVay was like a teenager.
Well, he had a cup of coffee. Yeah, that's true. It was a while back.
Yeah, but LaFleur, I guess he was a Shanahan guy. He bombed out with the Jets, and now he's a McVay guy. So we'll see what happens this time around. But yeah, I like Kubiak as well. He's not my number one, but of the guys we've interviewed, he's definitely my favorite. I think there's a lot to like there. I think that he would at least be passable, and I think that's really all you need. I think that the personnel on this offense, minus the offensive line stuff, is capable of doing the rest of the lifting if they can just get a guy who's decent. And maybe Kubiak will be more than that. Maybe Kubiak will be great. Like maybe he just needed that first stint in New Orleans to kind of get the basic understanding of what you can and can't do in the NFL.
Yeah, I think I think he's got a lot of potential as an OC. I think that he did some real fine creative work with New Orleans last year. They had some other things come up there with that organization, losing Olave. Offensive line health was not great through the year. Carr couldn't remain healthy throughout the year. So there's some explanation for why they weren't maybe playing on top of not most talent, probably one of the weaker offenses from a talent standpoint across the league, even when they're at full health. But he really did a good job with them of smoke and mirrors and finding creative ways to make it work with misdirection, which is a lot of what I like with it. And I think that he'll be a good coordinator, Brendan. I mean, there's no certainties, but he gives you a little bit close. He gives you the place where I want as close to certainty as we're going to get with the candidates that are out there that seem available.
Right. And it's also worth noting that there are still 8 teams alive in the postseason. There may be a lot of candidates that you could look at next week and the week after and the week after that. So I wouldn't be surprised if this lingers on for a few more weeks until we actually hire our guy. Like maybe we want to kick the tires on like LaFleur, but we can't interview him yet because the Rams are still in the playoffs, right?
It's true. Yeah. So you got to wait maybe a little bit. Maybe they're going to hold off on that. And this fits to type last year where they were going to go through as many candidates as possible, really interview as many people as they could.
Yeah. So I think that's about all that's going on. The Hank Fraley second interview was announced like half an hour ago. So, I mean, Hank Fraley, I mean, I get the appeal. It's not really, I don't know. How often do you see an offensive line coach become a really good offensive coordinator? I feel like that's a pipeline that doesn't get tapped all that often.
No, I can't think. I mean, I know it's happened at some point, and probably happened a couple times over, but recently I can't think of it happening a lot. And he's done a really good job there, Brendan. There's a lot of guys you can go in there and look at that have developed well as far as young guys they've drafted or guys who come in. Who is it? They had Kevin Zeitler this year who came in who, hasn't exactly, he played a really nice level this year. I don't think he's been playing quite at that level in recent years, but a lot of what you're doing with Fraley at that point is just looking to his track record of development with the linemen more than it is back to, has he called plays? Can he sequence plays? What kind of play caller is he? Does he, how's his passing concepts? Is he just going to be a run guy? So it's a little hard to tell on that.
Yeah. So what was Tom Moore an offensive line guy? I feel like he was. That might be the one example I can think of off the top of my head.
I think that's right. I want to say that's right. That sounds right.
Yeah. I'd go with something like that. So yeah, I think that catches us up. I think we're up to date on Seahawks stuff. And hey, I'm starting to get a little bit of a vibe here that Kubiak's the guy, and I'm on board with that, man.
I'll feel good about that hire. I feel good that they took care of the initial onset of business they had to and hired the best guy they could for the position. So, like I said, it's not going to be some A+. Oh my God, this is great, but you'll feel real good about it. Solid B+ to almost right on the edge of an A- kind of signing from their perspective, I think, and that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, what is A+? I'd argue Frank Reich is A+, but he might be retired.
Yeah, I don't think, to your point, I don't think there was A+ available this offseason. So you're to get something in a scarce market as far as coordinators go that isn't really that A guy, to find a guy that's kind of that A- guy a little bit, or high B+. That makes it a solid signing.
Yep. And we'll see what happens over the next week. Maybe this time next week we'll have an actual OC to talk about.
That'd be great.
All right. So you want to turn the page to this roster discussion?
Well, let's do it.
Okay. So like I said, the Seahawks are currently estimated to be about $27.5 million over the cap. Now, that number's probably not exactly accurate, but we are definitely over the cap right now. I don't think there's any doubting that. So there's work to be done, and there are 3 things that you can really do. There are 3 things that you can do. You can cut players and reclaim their base money against the cap. You can restructure players and push their money into future years and reduce the current cap hit at the expense of having a bigger cap hit later. Or you can extend players and move their cap hit back to later years that you're putting on at the end of the deal. Those are basically the 3 ways that you can clear cap space in the NFL. So what we have here, what I have put together here, and I know you've looked at it, is a list of players who, if cut or traded, in some cases, I guess, some of them could be traded, would save the Seahawks some non-trivial amount of money. So what I'm suggesting is that we just go through the list and we just talk about the options and see how we feel.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
And one thing I should say before we start is that this is an offseason where you could go one of 2 ways. And we've talked about this, the idea of going for it versus taking a step back, right? And what we would want to do would be very different if we want to take a step back versus going for it.
That's right. It's the key question before we go into this, Brendan. I think that we have to operate from the assumption that this is going to be a go for it, because that's been where the team's been in that pocket for 10 long years, and to anticipate that they're going to take a left turn here is, I think, hard to do. So I think we're going to try and how we do this exercise, folks, operate from the standpoint a little bit of, like, historically speaking, recent history, especially how John's operated with this and the moves that he's looked to moving into these off seasons if he does need, especially to create cap space.
Right. And I would say it's very unlikely that any team that wins 10 games in a year is going to say we need to take a step back. That probably doesn't happen. So it sounds, I know it can kind of sound like, you and maybe even I wouldn't mind taking that step back, but I don't think it's practical. So I'm going to move forward assuming the team is going to do everything they can to win as many games as possible in 2025.
Yep, me too on that.
Okay, so the first guy, and this list is in order from biggest to smallest cap hit, so there's no particular reason why any one player is above another on this list. The number 1 player that we need to discuss here would be Geno Smith. What we do with Geno Smith this offseason is one of the more compelling questions of any team this offseason. As of right now, he is on a $44.5 million cap hit for 2025. Now, if we're talking about cutting him, the dead cap hit would be $13.5 million, meaning if you let him go or trade him, if you were able to find a trade partner, you would save $31 million in cap hit. So keeping in mind that extending him is an option, which we will talk about later, what would you do with Geno Smith, Brandon?
Yeah, this is one where you're going back to our point on starting out this exercise. Your team probably not taking a step back. Well, you're probably then going to try to be taking a step forward. The quarterback market is not good on the open market. You're not going to likely draft a guy very high, or there'll be a guy there for you to draft very high. So you go back and you extend Geno Smith. And in that extension, I think that with him not necessarily lighting the world on fire this year, you're probably going to see him at something around more closer to probably between $35 and $40 million rather than 45, like some people were worried about prior. So what that also then means is that you'll be able to structure this contract to save money, even though it's not a pure release, even though you're signing him to new money. The way you'll be able to structure this out from a bonus standpoint, in my opinion, is probably save somewhere between $5 to $8 million on a new deal with Geno Smith on a cap cost basis with an extension.
Yeah, I would estimate that we append like 2 years and somewhere around $75 to $80 million to the deal. So that would get you to a point where the total deal is somewhere around 3 years, 120 million. So about 40 mil per. And because we still owe him the bonus from the current deal, we have to get the cap hit down to about 31 million to break even. I think you can easily do that. I think if you extend him out to where it's a 3-year deal, you get that first year cap hit down to somewhere around 22 to 25 million. you're saving money.
Yeah, it's about, I've run the numbers. It's somewhere between 5 to 8 approximately, and some of it just depends on what his final numbers come down to too with it. But it's very easy to structure it in that way. It's not a completely wild-eyed prospect.
Right. And that is my preference as well. I want to extend Geno. I don't want it to be super long term. I think that he is probably getting close to the end of his physical prime. I think that, he's probably looking at maybe having 2 more really good years left. And then at that point, you need to see what's up before you commit to him. But I have no doubt in my mind, based on the quarterback market, that he's pretty easily worth that. When you look at what other quarterbacks are getting, I don't have a problem with that. I would support that. And I think that it could work as long as you do the next steps correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I would be a little differentiated from you on this. Just to a degree of this is definitely a prediction that I would put down that I see the Seattle Seahawks making and taking down this direction. But this is obviously a little bit of a different path of my approach to this offseason. And we've talked about this prior. We don't need to go back through it. But I would have a different approach in my offseason with this. But I also can acknowledge the fact that it's likely to happen.
Right. So, yeah, that's the big one. So you do that, you're saving, let's call it like $7.5 million, something like that.
Sounds good.
Somewhere around there. Next guy that we need to have a conversation about, the other big one on the books here, would be DK Metcalf. And this is the guy you obviously would not cut. You would trade him. His current cap hit is just under $32 million. His dead cap as of right now, if traded before June 1st, would be $21 million. The cap savings, therefore, would be just under $11 million if you move him. Now, apparently, if you go post June 1st because of his restructuring, because of his void years, the number actually goes down a little bit and gets pushed down to 2026. The dead cap, if you trade him post June 1st, not that I think you would do that. That's really hard to do because that's after the draft, would be about $14 million, meaning you're saving $18 million. But the more likely number would be the dead cap hit of $21 million with the cap savings of about $11 million. So, again, keeping in mind that an extension is on the table, what are you doing with DK Metcalf?
I'm anticipating a lot like the Geno deal that it's probably going to be extended. The only way you're really moving to DK Metcalf is if you're taking that step back in 2025, which we've already made, I think, a pretty good argument as to why that's not going to be the case. So you sign DK, I would anticipate that it's probably going to be 31 million-ish a year is about what I think he'll be in line to be getting at that point. So I don't know if there's going to be a way with how they've structured this to necessarily save a lot past maybe a couple $1 million on a new deal to DK Metcalf, but probably a couple million you'd save on an extension with him.
Yeah, I mean, the current cap hits 32. If you give him the extension, it's probably going to be an extra 3 years. You're probably looking at something around, you could probably save, if you really wanted to, probably save as much as like, 7 to 8 million if you wanted to like really push it out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe it's going to be more like 5 million, but it's going to matter. Every little bit matters right now. We have a lot of cap space we need to shave down.
Yeah, let's call it 5 million. Just to be fair with it, because there's other ways too with it where I do think John's going to have to get kinky here with the first year of these deals on these 2 new extensions with what he's got to do with the cap.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where if you're going to do one thing, you may as well do the other thing. Like if you're going to keep Geno, are you really going to get rid of Metcalf and then have Geno work with JSN and really nothing else? Like that's tough. Like, what's the point then? At that point, just don't keep Geno. Just get rid of everything.
I would agree with you. I think that this is either you're all in or you're not. You're all out. There really isn't an in between path to take on this one.
Yeah, I'm not in love with the Metcalf stuff right now. He's kind of frustrated me to this point. I'm a little bit more down on him than I've been before, admittedly. But I think you just have to kind of cross your fingers on this one. And look, he's a good player. It's not like he's bad or anything like that. It's just, I don't feel good about giving him $30 million a year, but I don't know what else you can really do.
Yeah, you're giving this contract out to him. He's earned it. This is the price that it costs, but I share your trepidations with the situation with DK. I worry about how his game is going to age when he does lose speed. I, again, have a little bit of a different outlook. And if I was, wanting to see this team move this offseason and be pushed to do things very intelligently, I don't know if this would, what we're saying is going to be how it goes down is not exactly, I think, how I would definitely have things go down and how I do this. But you do one move, you do the other. There just doesn't make any sense to do it, go a different direction with that. You made a good point on that. And so it'll probably be done.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense, the opposite way, to keep Metcalf and get rid of Geno, right? Because then you have, Metcalf and who's your quarterback going to be? It's going to be somebody who can get him the ball.
Yeah, only if you're making a Trevor Lawrence kind of move, would that be workable in that scenario?
Right. So I think that's probably the likely outcome as well. I think that these teams err on the side of not blowing it up and keeping things as stable as possible.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Okay, number 3, Tyler Lockett, currently due almost $31 million against the cap. If he is released or retires, and by the way, some people ask about this, Lockett, if he retires, I don't believe the money changes. That's why it's called guaranteed money. You get it no matter what, even if you retire. Ask Aaron Donald about that. That's
teams can technically come back after players who retire early with bonus money left, but they very infrequently do it. It's very, very infrequent.
Yeah, I don't think we do it for Lockett. He's been
no. We definitely don't do it as an organization.
Yeah, the Patriots did it for Aaron Hernandez, but that was a
I think that the 49, remember Harbaugh did it to the Niner right tackle too back in the day, where the right tackle retired him on Sunday because he was pissed off with Harbaugh and got tired of him, and then they went after his.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It's very rare. It's a dick move, man. It don't look good organizationally because so few teams do it.
But anyway, the dead cap on Lockett would be about 14 million, and the savings would be 17 million. So I don't think an extension is on the table. I can't even fathom why they would consider doing that. So does he stay or does he go? What do you got?
I'd say he probably goes, and we'll see if there's a market out there that's very warm for Lockett. Not that he's not still a player who can play in this league, but wide receiver is a very competitive position in this sport. And I do think you got to go full release here. This is a guy that saves you as much money as anybody outside of Geno in your ability to clear out that space. And that's a substantial amount of cash you can clear. And so even a restructure where it's like, well, okay, we're going to give him a 1 year, $5-6 million deal. It's like, well, that just pulls down basically the biggest lever you have to pull to create cap space now is being reduced, and you've got to create this cap space. It's not an optional thing. And this where people do get, I think, a little bit not sensitive about it because there's a lot of love for Tyler, and there should be second best wide receiver in Seahawks history. He's deserved that credence, but it's also, you got to make the business decisions here because you are up against it as far as the cap goes. And that means maxing out the savings here for a guy who has some limitations at the wide receiver position at this point in time in his career.
Yeah. Is there any amount of money you'd be willing to bring him back for? Like if you released him and brought him back, like, would you be okay with veteran minimum or vet min plus or anything?
It would be like a 1 year, $3 million deal, I think, at the most. So, we're saving 17. So we save only 14 million instead of 17. Maybe even that, though, I'd be hesitant. And some of this depends upon who the OC is going to be, because the two parts that I keep coming back to that stand out to me with Tyler, or really the three parts, I guess, are number one, there's no yak anymore. And that's okay. That was all right when he was able to still take the top off the defense and be, at times even a contested catch threat. But that part of his game has also gone down here with time. And there are more and more plays the last couple of years where I'm seeing, a catch he might have made 5-6 years ago. Now there's really almost no chance he's going to make that grab. And then the blocking. You have in Tyler a guy that's going to be a negative for you as far as a blocker goes out in that football field when he's out there as receiver. I mean, that's three detriments that you're rocking with. And then what is the plus side that he currently now brings as a player? What is it that's not you essentially doing this deal because of kind of legacy? And I understand the reasoning in doing that, but I don't think the teams are smart signing players to legacy deals. I don't. And I think we've given him a hell of a golden parachute over the last 2 years to feel like we've done certainly right by him as a player and how we paid him and all of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in this offense with Metcalf and JSN, you can probably find somebody that can give you about what Lockett gives you for like 600,000 next year in the draft. If you draft Tez Johnson, how much is he going to count against the cap the first year? Like 650,000.
Yeah.
And he will give you maybe more than what Lockett would give you, honestly.
Yeah. And especially if it's a guy that's, maybe a guy that's a, kind of a yak guy, the kid out of TCU, wide receiver they got there. I was watching a kid last night as well. There's a couple of these, kind of yakish sort of players in this draft from the wide receiver position that might be more fitted to what you need on the team that you don't have as a current player that, can fit right into a Z spot in your offense and work very well.
Right. So I think we're both on the same page there. Sorry, Lockett. You got to go. You got houses to sell.
Got houses to sell, man. It's been a great career. It's been a great run, my man.
Right. Okay. So this next one would only come out if you want to apply the nuclear option, which is basically blow it up and get all these older players off the team. The Leonard Williams coming off
That's
a
not,
year.
Yeah. No
This
way.
would be what you do if you're just like, okay, clear the deck. Everything got to go. You would save a lot of money. It would be about 16.6 dead on a 29.1 cap hit. So you'd save about 12.5 million. And post June 1st, by the way, would be 8.3 dead, which is 20.8 savings. But again, if we're talking about going for it, Leonard Williams has to be part of that.
Yeah, and there's no way you're doing a post June 1st day release at that point. If you're doing anything, you're going to be moving him in a trade. But there's no chance here. He stays here now in the future.
Yeah, especially if you're going for it. And honestly, even if you wanted to take a step back, a lot of these defensive tackles age better than I thought. Like you look at it, some of these guys are playing good and they're like 35, 36.
Yeah, and you just signed him to the deal. You gave him a second round pick. I mean, he played like defensive player of the year this year. So there's the 0% chance on that.
Would you consider restructuring Leonard Williams to push some of that cap hit out to 2026 to save approximately 9.4 million this year?
I would keep that lever more for as sort of an in-season, create a lever to create space, trade deadline deal. I think that there's other places we can create enough space to get the deal done, unless this team wants to be hyper aggressive in free agency.
Which I would welcome, but
sure.
I think that's not going to happen.
That's correct. I think that we do know that.
Yeah, just for the record, doing it would get his cap hit down from about 29.2 to 19.8. So is something worth thinking about, and I'm sure they will, but right now I don't think we have to do it.
I would agree with you there. I think that there's a possibility, but probably down the line if you're going to do it.
All right, next one up, and this is going to be one that I think there's going to be a lot of consensus on. You've got Mr. Draymont Jones. Didn't quite work out. I mean, okay, I want to give him a little bit of credit. He wasn't terrible last year, but we're not getting the bang for our buck. There's plenty of money to be saved if you move off of him. It's 25.6 million against the cap, 14.1 dead if you move off of him, which means it would be $11.6 million in savings. You could also post June 1st him and save 16.5. Team seems relatively resistant to doing post June 1st stuff, it feels like, so I'm not super into that idea necessarily, but as for the original idea, saving 11.6 million, are you in or are you out?
I am in on that. I also am definitely in on the potential of post June 1st. I think sometimes the reason that they haven't done the post June 1st has been a little bit of John wanting to, being like last year, for instance, let's take Jamal Adams. You were going into it with McDonald as the young coach where you go, look, we're not in a go for it mode this year. We got a new coach. He's got to figure out his way. This is a year where maybe we should just eat that dead money in the way and just kind of suffer the pain a little bit this year fully, rather than stretch it out for a year where we're not going to make a lot happen. This might be more of a year where they do that, especially considering, Brendan, how tight the cap is in regards to this one with Dre'mont. And that's a substantial amount of money that you could save on top of where we stand so well in 26 and 27 as far as the cap situation goes. But no matter what, he gets released. This is a guy you signed to be a 3-tech. A lot of people, well, he did some edge stuff. He did some edge stuff with Denver. He was signed to be a 3-tech for you. I know that then the people go, well, he doesn't fit into Mike McDonald's scheme. That's why they had to move him to the outside. No, you moved him to the outside with Carroll. So he was already moved out there before Mike McDonald came along. It just hasn't worked here. He's not been horrifically bad, but he's not been particularly good either. Not for the price that he's costing. You pull this lever and you pull it very easily.
Yeah, there are probably some like third round rookies you could get that could replace Dre'Mont's production pretty seamlessly, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you could find a couple guys.
Yeah, and there's no way you can have him on the 25.6. So if you didn't cut him, you would extend him. So I think that cutting is clearly the only consideration here. I don't think you could ever extend Dre'Mont given the way he's played the last 2 years. You can't.
No possibility.
Right. So just for records here, let's say so Geno, you're saving 7.5. Let's say DK, you're saving 5. Lockett, you're saving 17. So you've gotten up to about 30. And now with Dre'Mont, if you do post June 1st, you're up to about 46 million. Okay. So you're there. You're more than there now. We are in compliance with NFL rules and regulations already by about 19 million. So we're off to a good start.
Hell yeah. We're rolling.
Next,
we're just getting warmed up.
Yeah. We got, we gotta, this, what do they call it? The fatted calf. We gotta trim it down. What do they call that?
Right. Yeah. I know what you're trying to say, but I can't remember how the phrase goes either.
It's in the Bible somewhere.
Trim the fat, something like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Uchenna Nwosu's next up here. 21.2 cap hit this year. Dead cap would be 13 if you let him go. So that means you're saving 8.2 approximately. Call it 8.2 million. Post June 1st, you're saving 14.7. So you're basically splitting the dead cap across 2 seasons. So there are a couple things you can do with Nwosu here, by the way. He's also a guy you could theoretically restructure. How are you playing the Uchenna Nwosu card this offseason?
Sometimes football is about having to make a gamble and also about making that gamble based upon the data that you currently have. And, players, as we saw with Jamal Adams, can sometimes have this injury thing start as a momentum thing. And they're snake bit. It's hard to explain, body breaking down, bad luck, whatever you want to apply. You're watching it kind of go down here a little bit, I think, with Uchenna Nwosu. And this is a place that I believe that when you go to the edges and you look across edges in the NFL, I think I would be turn at this point to cut him and release him out. Probably not post June 1st and probably just get the first year out fully. Don't need to stretch it like Dre'Mont's on this one. But at the same point in time, I think that number one, I don't know if he starts for you next year with the 2 edges you've got. Number 2, I don't know if I can trust that health anymore. And sure would be bad if you go into next year and again, he gets injured even on sort of spot duty. You're going, yeah, we could have kind of anticipated some of this. There's a lot of edges usually on the open market you can go get. You usually go find a competent third edge, Brendan, right? Because we're talking about find a competent third edge behind the mix, draft maybe another guy in there on top of that. You're feeling okay. Like go make a trade for Jadeveon Clowney, for instance. I like that, releasing Uchenna and Clowney's fit to this defense more than I like Uchenna and his fit to this defense off the edge there. So I'd rather make kind of a move like that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I've thought about it. I think as of right now, my leaning is to keep him because you're not saving that much. Like 70% of the contract would be dead, but I'm open to it. I look at what Uchenna did after he got back at the end of the year, and I thought he played fairly well. I didn't think it was bad or anything. I thought it was overall pretty good. It made me feel okay with bringing him back, but I'm going to be pretty open-minded on that one personally.
Yeah, it's for me a health thing more than anything else, and I'm okay with keeping him too. I don't think he would be a guy that'd be probably one of those rare players. I'm more okay. What's the other option we're going to if not him? So you'd have to have the plan in place of we have this player that we like. The cost goes down a little bit. We feel maybe we even improve the position a little bit. So I do want to know about who I'm kind of getting in our ideal of replacement there, but I could go either way on that. It's just in general to do the release.
Yeah. The other option with Nwosu would be to restructure him. You could kick out about 6.6 million into 2026 and get his cap it down to 14.5, which again would make 2026 a pain in the butt. So I don't think you want to do that until you know that he's all the way back. But it is technically an option.
I'd be very hesitant to do that one. That's just you'd have to let it ride out if you're going to let it ride out, but don't try to do more for something that's not been, it's been a bad contract in retrospect. Not that it wasn't a good signing, it's just not been a good, don't double down on that.
Unlucky player.
Unlucky, man. That happens.
All right. We got one more big contract to talk about here. Noah Fant. Noah Fant due $13.4 million this year. 13.4. Only 4.5 dead if you move on, meaning you're saving about $8.9 million if you move off of Noah Fant. So what are we doing?
Yeah, this one's actually really easy. Noah Fant came here through his first 2 years, had like half the production in those first 2 years of what he was doing in Denver to start his career. Last year was another disappointing year for him as far as that goes. And I'm speaking just as a pass catcher. He gives you very little as a blocker, run blocker, pass protector. It's pretty limited. He's one of those guys who's a toolsy guy who never reached his ceiling, is how I feel about him. And I look at this draft right now, Brennan, and I've been scouting quite a few of the tight ends coming out of this draft. And what Noah fills is an H-back tight end role in this offense. So your inline guys, A.J. Barner, you need to usually have an H-back type tight end, a move tight end, a guy that can be a mismatch against linebackers and safeties in space, which is what Noah Fant's supposed to be. Well, this draft's loaded up with guys. I know that you hear, and I think that the most popular first-round player that I hear applied to our Seattle Seahawks by fans and even content creators talking about it seems to be Warren. Warren. I hear nothing about Tyler Warren, this kid out of Penn State, over and over again. Well, that's an H-back. There's your H-back replacement for Noah Fant right there. And if you want to go into the second round and you want to do it there, you might be able to. You're going to get Colston Loveland or Harold Fannin or Mason Taylor. There's the gunner kid with Texas. He's another H-back. He's another H-back type. So I think he's more probably, rather than having to go into second round, probably more third round-ish area is where you'll be able to get him. So, you got options here where you can go cheaper and you can go find your option that third round who gives you a guy that's going to give you exactly what Noah's going to give you.
Yeah. I think this one's a little bit of a no-brainer. And by the way, Tyler Warren might be your quarterback too. Have you seen his arm? He can sling it.
Any? All right.
They do the trick plays with him and stuff. He's like, he can beat Taysom Hill maybe.
Oh, that's exciting. I'm with it.
So yeah, that's $9 million that I need elsewhere for sure. I think that's a no-brainer. I don't like, you could, I guess, extend him, but why?
Oh, and it's just he can't. Another guy can't stay healthy. I just always in and out of the lineup, always dealing with something, even though you're not used that much. Why are you injured so often?
Yeah, it's been frustrating because the dude is talented. It just never quite came together.
Goes that way sometimes.
All right, now we're on to the more marginal contracts, but there are still significant savings to be had.
Let's keep our running total here for let's do with the Fant.
Let's see here. Let's say we keep Nwosu for a second, that's another $9 million on top of the theoretical
$55 million is where we're at right now.
Yeah, $55 million, which goes to about 63 if we let go of Nwosu.
Right.
So, I'm going to leave that one up in the air. I think that could go either way.
Let's just stay at the 55 for now, because I agree. I think the Nwosu thing's on the line.
Rayshawn Jenkins due $7.8 million, but only 2.5 is in a bonus, which means you let him go. That's $5.3 million in your pocket.
Easy peasy one. There's some pretty decent safeties in this class. Bryant's ascent. You could draft a safety, even if you want to sign Bryant to an extension, play him out another year. You draft a safety for his replacement. Love is playing good play for you on the other side of it. Rayshawn did not give you a whole hell of a lot this year. It's got injured, so he had a cast on his hand through a lot of the games here this year early on. But even once he came back, I don't know that you really felt a lot of his impact or effect for the price that you're going to be paying moving into next year on the guy.
Yeah, he broke his hand and then he just forgot how to tackle, man. And it was ugly at times. It was like rough watching Rayshawn a lot of this year, man.
Yeah, and I just felt like that was always a one-year deal. I've been saying this from the start with him. It's a one-year deal. Like I think the Noah Fant deal was a one-year deal. And I think he fits to like the Jerome Baker Dodson contract where these guys were sort of just placeholders until you could get back around to addressing the positions this next offseason. You had other priorities. And so you kind of just, you sort of punted on those one-year deals, but a one-year deal is what it was.
All right, so that's an easy one, and that gets us to 60, I think, right? Because that's
How much money do we save?
5.3.
Okay, so yeah, $60.3 million.
Okay, next up, a little bit of a conversation to have with Jason Myers because an odd year is coming up, you know?
It is. The situation on this one is one, though, where you're just going to ride out the last year of his deal, because if you move off of Myers, you do have some dead money. You're still then going to have to go find a kicker that you're probably going to give money to unless you're going to draft a guy. Drafting a guy is one place people have talked about doing, Brendan, but this has not been necessarily a safe place for NFL teams, right? Look at Moody right now with the 49ers, and that just because you go draft a guy and draft him high doesn't mean that you're going to get the great performance there. So we have a little bit of the devil we know. And yes, that's going to be Mr. Hyde, smoking cigars, taking shots of whiskey, slapping women. It's like, this is the Myers version we're getting now here. And we're just going to have to ride out for a final year and see what goes on, Yeah.
For the record, do 6.8 million this year, 3.8 dead, which means you save about 3.1 million if you cut him. Post June 1st, you could cut him and save about 5 million. So there is money to be had here. I don't think the team's going to do it because he did have a really nice year in 2024. I don't think I know that we do the whole odd year Myers thing. I don't know if coaches take that all that seriously. I think the coach is just like, oh, he'll be good. Why wouldn't he be good? He was good last year.
It's such a wild statistic, right? Because there's no kickers that this is like this with. That's why we note it so much, is that we just don't ever see. You see kickers go through like they'll have a bad couple of years and they have a good couple of years and then back in a good couple of years. It'll be a little maybe of some of that where there is some up and down on the play, but it's not a year by year basis thing with him, which is just the wild part about with Myers, and that just it's a calendar. I mean, you literally can just time him on how his performance is going to be. But yeah. The $4 million of dead money is substantial for a kicker. And even if you save that $3 million on the front, you're signing a veteran minimum kicker to minimum $2 million. And it's probably going to cost you more than that if you want to get any kind of quality one. So you end up actually spending more money to move off of Myers.
Yeah, we could go get Jake Moody.
Right? He's going to be available.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's got a big leg. I don't know what happened this year.
It's all the long snapper's fault. Didn't you see Debo choking the long snapper? It's all on him, man.
It is worth noting we could restructure him and save about 1.9 million against the cap in 2025. That is an option. I imagine that's something you do mid-season for a trade, maybe more so than something you do now, but it is an option available to the team.
Yeah, something to address maybe down the road is a possibility.
All right. This next one's going to be pretty easy because there is zero guaranteed money here, not a penny. Roy Robertson Harris, do 6.6.
Bye.
But you don't have to pay him a penny if he goes. Fully non-guaranteed. Love it.
Bye. Yeah. Roy Robertson Harris did not give us a whole hell of. He had one game against Atlanta where he was very impressive. Outside of that, a play here, a play there. He was just not particularly very good. He was coming in to serve the power edge role. He's essentially brought him because Dre'mont could not get the really job done as the power edge on his side, and Derek Hall wasn't coming forward as far as a run defender this year. So that's why you had to make that move to kind of fill in a Band-Aid for the moment. But $6.6 million, that's a lot of money. And I would make that move on the Seattle Seahawks. I would clear that space.
Yeah. Would you bring him back for the vet min?
No, he just didn't. You need a power edge that's not a guy that's going to be like a mixed bag over there. What you need is to me, Brendan, more, maybe even specialize this where we've got a Red Bryant power edge kind of defender early downs to be a run defender type guy. And then you can float a guy in who's more of a pass rusher later on. You're not going to find a pure Red Bryant guy that is just no pass rush at all that he's not going to supply, but you can split this up a little bit. I think you can go find that guy that can be this, and then you can go to that on the more of the rushing downs, which is kind of what they're doing with him there. And you don't have to pay 6.6 for a guy that, no, I just don't think he showed me very much.
Right. So that's a 6.6 we can slap onto the total, which is now up to what?
$66.9 million.
Very nice. Okay. Let's see here. George Fant is up next. This is going to be another pretty easy one. Do 5.7, but only 1.9 is guaranteed. So you're saving 3.8.
Yeah. Bye-bye to Fant on that one as well. Injured all year, has a very rich injury history, moving into his heading kind of getting closer, I think more mid 30s than even early 30s at this point, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And that's makes this kind of a no-brainer on that all the way down the line. Cost is too much for a backup guy. Age, you don't want to take that risk. You were injured all last year, so we didn't get any performance out of you in the first place. You kind of got a free season of a contract to you. Good for you on that, but we're saving that money. We're moving on.
Yeah, he's got to retire. His body's broken down completely.
I agree. I think that's just the way that this has got to go.
All right. The last guy on this list that is making significant money would be Michael Dixon. And he's a guy we're probably going to have to talk about extending because this is the last year of his deal. However, it is worth noting you would save about $3 million if you moved off of Dixon. Would you do that?
No, you're going to do an extension, like you said, heading into the final year of his deal. So you'll probably end up saving about $1 million or $2 million on the deal on an extension, lowering down his first year hit.
Right.
But you're not going to definitely move off of him on that side.
Yeah, I actually looked at an extension. I'd estimate somewhere around 4 years, 16. And he's totally worth that. He might be the best punter in the league. I'm good with it.
Yeah, he's been amazing for you. He's consistent every single year. We've said having almost, if there could be a Hall of Fame start to a punter's career, that's maybe not possible anymore. That's maybe not a thing anymore. But if it is a thing, that's what Dixon's giving you right now as a player. And so no reason to go any other direction from that.
Right. There are also 3 players who are entering their 4th year in the NFL this year that you are starting to have some slightly bigger cap hits kicking in, right? So in our case, you've got Abe Lucas, you've got Kobe Bryant, you've got Reek Woolen. Would you consider moving off any of those 3 guys?
I think Reek Woolen's going to be a big potential for being a trade partner out there. Yeah, just because the fact I think the Hawks are just an instinctual thing. I don't have anything necessarily. I know anything. I don't know anything. Just it's kind of get a sense on this one. This could go this way. The only guy that I'm extending this offseason on those rookie deals is Charles Cross. Maffe's been good, but what's Maffe going to want? You know,
I looked at some numbers. I estimate 4 years, 60, 4 for 60. That's what.
And see, I can just as well come back next year and sign him to that. After, you know, I can try to sign him to that next year if that's really what he's, you know, come back another year and give me a year of you know, he's fine, but he's not. And maybe there's still some upside there with him as a player, Brendan. But I feel like with Maffe, he's pretty good, but I don't know if he's good enough for me at this point to give him that kind of contract.
I would be okay with it. I'm okay with letting it ride. I'm okay with extending him. I'm pretty ambivalent there. I like Maffe. I think he's a good player. 460 is probably worth it. But at the same time, like he's due 2.7 this year. It's whatever you extend him to is going to be way more than that. I don't need to be adding costs here.
No, I don't. And I just kind of almost like the thought process of waiting out another year and seeing if he takes that next step to sort of 12, 13 sack plays. Cause he essentially had kind of like about the same year as last year when it's all said and done, which is, it's a fine, solid year for an edge, but it's not upper crust stuff here. You know, I'm not talking Myles Garrett stuff when I say upper crust. I'm talking like, you know, Andrew Van Ginkel type stuff. Like he's not even in that area of things really in his play. So I'd rather go and get him through another year. And if he comes out and gives you another year at 8 or 9 sacks, good run defense, well, his value will be where it is at that point. He's going to have a hard case to make to say I should be paid up in that 15, 16, 17 million per year. And if he comes back and gives you the 13 sack season with good run defense, well, yeah, you got the franchise tag still as a potential that you can put him over if you want to do that. And since you've already locked up Cross at that point, you have nobody else that's really then due to be in the crosshairs to have that franchise put on him if you have to use that as a method. And I think they'd find an extension point at that point if you did it, but you're not trapped if he goes out and has that great year at that point.
All right. So just to make sure we have everything right here, you're letting it ride with Abe Lucas.
I'm letting it ride. Yeah.
You're letting it ride with Kobe Bryant.
I'm actually in favor of if Abe Lucas has the health thing good from the insider standpoint, like the locker room is that like they shut him down the last game of the year, not because the knee was like, it's chronically horrible, but they're like, look, we're just going to be protective. What's the point of playing him? It's a game for nothing, you know? So if his health is good, Brendan, he would be right behind Cross for me that I would extend him.
All right. Would you do like 3 years, 30 million on him appended to the end of this deal? So it would end up being like 4 years, 32.
Yeah. So it'd be like you're getting essentially the discount on the fact that where you've had to suffer the pain and the price a bit of his knee injury, not getting him to be out the field all the way. You'll get the benefits now of that injury where he wasn't out there playing to be more consistent as a performer, to drive more of the cost up. where you're now getting a discount if you know that health is good. That's the caveat. That it's not this, well, it's chronic, it's Todd Gurley, bone on bone. There's no more cartilage left in the knee, none of that stuff. But if it's actually that the doctors give you the nod and Abe's like, I feel good, and you get in a little bit of a discount rate from where it would be for his performance and his play on the field, sign me up.
Oh yeah, okay. You're letting it ride with Kobe Bryant?
Yes.
And you're moving Woolen.
I'm moving Woolen.
So moving Woolen would be 1.1 million saved, just for the record. I know it's not a lot, but 1.1 million, that's I wish I had 1.1 million.
Yeah, every little bit helps. And that takes us to 71.8.
All right. So
minus the Charles Cross deal.
Right. And the Cross deal, I would estimate 4 years, 104 million. So 1 million per year more than the Bucks guy. Who's the Bucks guy?
Wirfs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if he makes quite what Wirfs going to make, because Wirfs was an all pro when he got signed. Right. So he's probably at like 17 million per, something like that per year.
Yeah, if you include the last year of the rookie deal, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, let me take a look and make sure I get these numbers right. So, okay, Darisaw got 26 per. So if Cross got 4 for 104, it would be identical to Darisaw.
Yeah, I think that's a fair outlook of it. And then Darisaw has, for instance, Darisaw's cap hit next year is 9.6 in the second year of his deal. Mm-hmm. So let's also call it like 7 million off the initial cap hit, right? Do you see where I'm going with that? So Darisaw's second year, so it would have been less in his first year. I can't see over the cap, doesn't let you go back to 24 on this. But I would guess his cap hit then. So if we have Cross in the same place, let's take off 7 million from the 71.8, basically. So we're at 64.8, right?
Yeah, that's got to be right. All right. And for the record, Andrew Thomas got 23.5 million 2 years ago when he extended. And I think Cross is going to be in a similar position to Thomas, just with the cap having gone up.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense on that.
So I say 4 years, 104 for Cross.
That works.
Yeah. And let's see. You could extend Ken Walker, but we're not going to. You could extend Abe Lucas, which we talked about. What would you be open to a Kobe extension, or do you want to see it for 1 more year? Is there any like wiggle room you have there, you think?
I mean, if they signed him to an extension, I'd understand it, and I would get that Mike likes the skill set and sees how it fits long term. I would be more preference to see him do it out another year myself. I also don't know that I really want to be I do kind of feel like there's a little bit of this, Brennan, of when it comes to the running back in the safety position with the Seahawks, that there's the course correction that needs to be kind of brought into play here a bit, being that we have tended in recent history to spend a lot of money in our safeties, and that didn't really work out well for us. Julian Love's not making a crazy amount of money, but he's making good money, worthwhile play for that. But do I want to be paying both those safeties at that amount of money, at a pretty high level mark at that point? First going out there, especially in a draft like this that does have some safety options, where I could get ahead of this, Brendan, where I go get maybe a Malachi Starks who's now waiting in the wings for a year. If Kobe does go to and maybe they like Malachi better, is the kind of guy that maybe is more in that role. So some of this falls to what Mike thinks on this a bit. If he really loves Kobe, I'd get it because of that versatility, but I would like to probably get another year of it. I can't deny though that he played like a top 20 safety in the sport this year.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's pretty much everything. There's always more you can do. You can tack on void years. You can do crazy trade stuff where you get out of money because of trades. But realistically, that is basically the full length of what we can do. So we got to what? 64, you said?
64.8 million with Cross extended. Uchenna still on the roster. Mm-hmm. And that's 64. That gets us past the dead money, of course, too. So we're sitting in a place at that point, as we've said to people in the chat many times over here as we've had in this offseason, where they say, well, we're up against the cap. You are up against the cap, but you have cap flexibility. It's not about how much or little cap space you have. It's about how much flexibility you have to create space. The San Francisco 49ers have almost no flexibility in what they can do. That's not good. We have it. We can do this. That's a lot of money out there to go get things done out there. If they want to sign 2 prime time offensive linemen, still do all their normal business, Brendan, do the cross extension, all that, they could do it, right? I mean, we've said Tevin Jenkins, if they wanted Tevin Jenkins and Trey Smith, and you really wanted to hammer that, and you would get those 2 signings done, and you're like, look, we're driven by God to get this thing done. You could get it done and still put a team together. Is it likely they do that? No. You and I would both go, look, that's not their given history.
Yeah.
But could they? Yes. They're not. What I'm trying to say, Brendan, let's not give the front office a pass here for not making these moves because they're saying they're financially cash stripped, right? Let's not let them make a sort of a Mariner play of this where they're like, no, you can if you want.
Also, did your calculation include saving about $1 million on a Dixon extension? I can't remember if you did that.
I don't think we did the extension on, so that's $1 more million, so 65.8.
Yeah,
almost 60. Let's call it 60. Let's not do 60. Say that's an unlucky number. So 65.8 sounds better. 65.8 million.
Right. And again, like if you wanted to get more, you could tack void years onto Geno's deal. You could tack void years onto Metcalf's deal. You prefer not to, but you could. There's no rule against it. And honestly, with the way the cap is going up, like if you append $2 million void years in 2028 and 2029, you're not even gonna feel it by the time you get there.
You've got top 4 cap space, 26, top 2 cap space for 2027. So this is a thing, Brendan, this is why you make the one decision to the next to me. And we're open to being, if the Hawks want to go 2 different directions, obviously you and I would be with it, but we're anticipating they're going this direction, which is fine. You choose that path. But if you're choosing that path, to me, it is a little bit to then say, look, yeah, we got to pull a little bit from 26 to 27 to make this go. Yeah, we're going to clear some of this space with dead money, but there is going to be a bit of us. I don't know if it's pure void years. I don't know if it's just lowering down more of the base money and stretching out the bonus or doing those option bonus things, which is now kind of the new de jure contractual thing is we'll put the option bonuses down the lines. The player still gets the guarantee, but now the bonuses don't hit as heartily at the front end of the contract like they used to. There's a couple different ways you could do this, but you got to do it if you're going to take this line. If you're going to go down this line and say, no, it's a year where we are ready to go. Well, then show us you're ready to go with it by maximizing this to the utmost, by maximizing that future capital a bit to the utmost. Because otherwise, you're not going to have enough to get to me the business done that needs to be done to become a contender if you don't do some of that. Would you not agree?
I think I would agree with that. And let's go back to the Abe Lucas thing real quick, because this is interesting, because it's an opportunity to get him before he becomes very expensive, right? Because if he has a good year and plays in all 17 games in 2025, it's not going to be a 3-year, $30 million extension. It's going to be much more than that.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, you're doing like it's almost like Julio with the Mariners, but with an injury thing that makes it a little bit tougher. Where you're like, look, we're gonna give you the financial security here. You've been a guy's had some injuries here. That's probably gonna give you a nice peace of mind. But you're not gonna break the bank like you could if you want to go one more year on it. And that's to me could be beneficial, especially when you're paying Charles Cross up in that $20 million territory. Now you're able to kind of keep your 2 pillars in line, and you can really now laser focus in on that interior offensive line into the future of getting that hemmed up.
I've seen a couple comments in the chat saying my microphone's bad. It's probably because I got this new software. They discontinued the Blue Sherpa and forced everybody to use their Logitech G Hub or whatever. Sorry about that, everybody. I'll try to get that fixed for next time. But yeah, they completely blew up all my old microphone settings.
Yikes, dude. That's a nightmare. I get scared to death when thinking about that with my OBS stuff. I'm like, because anytime I go in there, it's like you touch one thing and it's like, you're in there for hours trying to fix it.
Yeah, I was installing a steering wheel so I could play American Truck Simulator, and it just like forced me to download G Hub. And when you download G Hub, it takes over everything on your.
Oh yeah. They've got these settings that'll just grab everything over the top, and then you can't figure out what settings taking this thing over the top. You got to like dig down. So it's gonna be hours and hours of troubleshooting. Just like,
yeah. Sorry about that, everybody. I will try to fix that for next time.
Let's get through we got a couple donation super chats here. Brendan, give me 1 second here. Be right back.
No problem. Brendan's noise gate is the issue to me. Let me see here. I could turn off the thing that automatically adjusts the mic volume. How do I sound now, guys? Let me know in the chat. Like I just turned off the option on StreamYard to automatically adjust the microphone volume, and now I can adjust it on my own. Maybe this will eliminate the noise gate crap. Okay, let's see if this is actually the solution here. Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. I really liked Blue Sherpa. I don't know why they discontinued Blue Sherpa. It was great. I loved Blue Sherpa. All right, sounds like everybody thinks that it's a little bit better. And Ryan, it's not the microphone. This microphone's fine. This is not a Walmart microphone. This is a Yeti. It's not as nice as Brandon's microphone, but this is a high quality microphone. It's not the microphone hardware. It's the software. It again blew up my settings. So,
Isaac,
I think we're better now.
Thank you, Isaac, for being a member. 9 months on the channel. If Udinski, he's on board with a 28-year-old. Let's go, Isaac.
Yeah. So that's Polish, right? If it ends in an I, like the Udinski, that's Polish, right?
I do believe so. There's sometimes where it can be, there are some other, I think that's original one, even if it's a different, like I think there are a couple of, you can get like Russians with some Inskis and stuff, but it's all so close to each other. I'm sure it all kind of comes out of that area.
Mm-hmm.
Be calm, see clearly. Thanks for the $2 donation. He says, I have the flu. I blame Ryan Grubb. This sucks. I'm sorry, man. Fluids and sleep, man. Fluids and sleep. Get through it and take care of yourself.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the flu in a while. I always get colds. I never get the flu.
Yeah, I'll usually get just kind of the fast colds, but I don't tend to get stuff that's too bad. What's helped me is being able to not have the 9 to 5 where I can sleep in because I'm such a night owl, Brendan. So it's like being able to do this and be able to stay up late and then sleep in, because I used to be one of those people that always stay up late and then try to get, for work and still be half out of it and always getting sick because I not getting the sleep.
Right. Yeah, I feel that.
Thank you, Be Calm. Appreciate you. Martin Lawrence, thanks for the $5 donation. If they do bring Udinski as OC, it's worse than Grubb. A real hit and hope. Probably the same outcome and just annoys the hell out of Mike McDonald. Well, he has to tell him to go to bed every night, Martin. I mean, that's also the part Mike's is like, I got to literally tell him to go to bed too, like, and eat his vegetables. And
yeah, 28 years old, man. I mean, that's significantly younger than me. That's younger than quite a few players on this team. We have like Geno Smith would be like, I got to listen to this guy.
And can you imagine Metcalf with some of his, like imagine a moment with him screaming into his, I don't know. It's just, Martin, I think we've got some of the same trepidation you do with this one. Maybe the guy's just that brilliant. Maybe he is, but I think I'd like to let somebody else take that risk on this kid rather than us right now where we stand organizationally.
Yeah, I mean, Rain Man was really smart too, right? Like he could count all the matches that fell out of a box of matches, but you ask him to light one of those matches, there's no way he'd ever be able to do it. So I wouldn't hire him to make decisions for me just because he was really smart.
Yeah, and there's no real way how he's going to act on game day, and when the other DC's doing this to him, and how there's no test that you can run those guys through if they've not had any live fire testing. And so that's where that risk just comes in so big to play, where you better be sure. And this is the place where there's no way to be sure, and I mean, maybe he is just that smart. Boy, that's just one where it just seems like it's a road to kind of ruin here potentially offensively. Or did you put Martin back to the same place we just found ourselves leaving this last offseason with Grubb?
Yeah, I think Grubb just has Grubb was ready for this opportunity. I think he just had a fundamental disconnect with how things are supposed to work in the NFL. With Udinski, I think it's just more like he hasn't been around football enough. I refuse to believe he's ready to be a play caller with 5 years of minimal coaching experience.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Just hard to see. Thank you, Martin. Appreciate for the donation. We share the same thoughts on that. Chad Hart, thank you for the $5 donation. Says Brendan, thanks for all the videos that you put out every day. Unlike some people who talk shit about Mesa, Arizona. Go Hawks, brother.
I don't know what that's a reference to. I don't know.
I dropped a defensive player of the year video on Leonard Williams yesterday, and I said that when he abused Evan Brown so bad that a grandma in Mesa, Arizona, called Child Protective Services on him, and
okay.
that's
that's not shit talking Mesa. That's shit talking Kyler. I mean.
Chad knows what I was referencing with it is the fact that it's a lot of blue hairs down in Arizona. So it's, it's kind of why I said grandmas, because there's a bunch of old people in Phoenix. So he's right to be sensitive about it. I was throwing shade at the Phoenix area folk.
Right.
A lot of retirees down there, Chad. That's what I'm saying. A lot of transplants. Just a lot of transplants. Need that warm weather. Go Hawks, brother. Slowby One, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, you guys see the second Clint interview just got here. We were talking a little bit at the top of that. Yeah. We both like to see this. I think from both of our standpoints, Slowby One, this is a guy that is our lead dog at the turn. That there could be other candidates that are better, but based on the people that we've heard that are available, that they have as possibilities, this guy seems as the best of the brightest.
Yeah, of the guys we're looking at, he's got to be in the driver's seat. And that's been the report that he is. Mike Garofalo said that he's the favorite right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it sure seems to me that Kubiak should be in the lead. He's the guy with play calling experience that's actually credible. Like, I know Thomas Brown has play calling experience, but it's been the results have not been good, at least.
Yeah, limited is the best you can kind of put it on that one with Thomas. And so makes sense that he is. Hopefully he gets it. We're hearing Cleveland's maybe not going to go in that direction with him. Like they
already hired someone else
in-house, right? They hired in-house. So that was one of the big threats there of plucking him. And hey, you got a better landing spot than Cleveland does. That's for sure. I mean, how long is Stefanski? They've got a nightmare they're facing right there as it stands.
I want to quick question about this though, Brandon. I want to ask, if let's say they hire Kubiak tomorrow, would you be good with that, or would you be a little bit concerned that they didn't let the interview more people and let the process play out along a few different weeks? Like, how would you feel?
No, I would think that this is in my opinion, it's an outsider's view in this, Brendan, and so it's a little bit with some ignorance involved because I don't know all the candidates that are available. So we can only operate off of who we think it, like, mentioned Frank Reich, Frank Reich maybe just say, I want to be retired. So based on the real availability that we really do see out there, that isn't just us hoping and praying, he really does seem like the best candidate for the job. He checks the boxes for me. I was very impressed by what he did. I was hearing a lot of good stuff from people that are smart football people last year with him in New Orleans, talking about his offense and how he was working around those limitations I've talked about. And these things all lead me towards that pathway of saying that, yeah, this is the right hire. If you got the right guy, I mean, there's exhaustive, and then there's exhaustive for the sake of being exhaustive. And if you're just picking through guys that have never called plays, and that's Fraley and to a degree Thomas Brown and this Udinski guy, and I mean, if these are the other candidates that we're turning through, like, this is by far the best as far as what is available out there. Don't you also believe that to be the case?
Yeah, that's probably true. I would say that Flur would be in the same area as Kubiak for me. Maybe not quite as good, but close. That would be the other one that really hits me. Other than that, like maybe Kafka, but you're not going to get Kafka probably. He's probably stuck in New York.
Yeah, I just think he stays there because he got that assistant coaching job last year. That's why that's the whole thing they did to keep him there. And I mean, hard for him to come back there and be like, no, I know you gave me that thing last year and you gave me a bump, but now, it's like the guy who at the job who keeps coming back for a raise. Like, oh, really? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cable's just barely here. You want to start asking for a raise?
Yeah, we need to hire Kurt Russell to help Mike Kafka escape from New York.
That's exactly it. And get Snake Plissken in there, man. Call me Snake. But yeah, Slowby One. We heard it definitely. I think where we're leaning towards on this one. I mean, even in LaFleur's case, you'd say it's an equivalency. There's not really any differentiation between him and Clint as far as what they bring to the table, and maybe marginally a little bit better, but he's not some bright, shiny, well above candidate than Kubiak. So it's a good role here, good move here. I'd be in favor of it.
I imagine his dad would be an advisor too, which would be great.
Guys, that's extra brain power, bro. That's right. And don't undersell that extra brain power, and that's helped Mike Shanahan through the years. You know it has. Yamo, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, yo, BNB. Don't you think we should trade down for Jonah?
I'm going to assume this is Jonah Savaiinaina, the Arizona tackle who will probably play guard in the NFL. If you could trade down a little bit in the first round to get him, I think that'd be about right. I mean, I got no issue with that overall. I think he'll be a good left guard in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a way to double down on the offensive line. Very straightforward in this draft is to what you do is you would go out and you'd move down off the first round and you'd get down into the mid-20s and take a guy like a Jonah. There's a lot of tackle converts in this draft that are hard to exactly write down at this moment, assess where they're going to go and all land at. Jonah, I've got a second round grade on, but okay, so you trade back in the first, you grab a guy like Jonah, you come back with the early third round pick, maybe you're able to pick up in making that move and go get another lineman. And now you've gotten two at that point, sort of, rather than just taking the one guy at 18. I think that's a real feasible possibility for our Hawks to go down that path, to be able to grab two linemen in the first 2 days. Wouldn't shock me to see him do it. And Jonah's a fun player who does, I think, probably project inside to guard and probably left guard at that, Yamo. So might be not a bad pick.
Yeah, I think I like him better than Booker. He might be my top left guard in this draft if he is a left guard.
I have a hard time with the tackle guard stuff, Brendan, when I talk about guys that you can have confidence in making that transition to tackle the guard. If they've not done any guard, it gets tougher for me. I think he's got definitely the size and the natural kind of width that you like for guards in the inside down there and the weight. He should be pretty good with it. Just gets hard for me now. And there's so many guys in this draft that a line like this to exactly know for sure they're going to be able to bend. Are they going to be able to win the leverage war? When a lot of these tackles, like Wyatt Milliam, a lot of what he does is, everybody says he's going to be a guard, but everything kind of comes down, right? Like he's high and hands come down like this rather than hands come up where you're going to shoot like this from the guard. So you see Milliam and everything's driving down like this. So it's like, well, how does that guy kick inside then and naturally just come up with his hands and it's no problem on making that transition?
Yeah, I think Milliam could maybe be a right tackle. He can move to right tackle maybe because he's more of a run blocker and it's going to be, it's better to run block on that side. I could see that more so than guard at this point.
Definitely a possibility to me too. And I'm having a hard time seeing it with Milliam as much, but I'll admit to this, Brendan, I'm feeling a little bit of when I'm watching some of these guys, Kelvin Banks is this way too at Texas, where he's a good lineman. I think he'll be able to go to guard at the next level, but it's all really more based upon their just natural size and build than it is on anything having to do with that especially that leverage aspect, which is such a key point for those guards inside. Can you win underneath? Can you get underneath the pads of guys, especially when you're so used to getting high as a tackle? So much of those tackles, they can work off being a little bit taller and higher. Right. Thank you, Yamo. Feed me more Seahawks. Thank you for the $2 donation. It says, don't forget, we have a new cap guy now.
Yeah, that's right. What happened to the old guy? Did he go to Washington or something? God, I can't remember.
I cannot remember myself. It was Carolina or Washington, I think. I forget.
Yeah. But does the new cap guy just do what the GM tells him to do? More so,
I think in general terms, I think he's got a mandate for how he's supposed to operate the cap and what John wants to in general terms. But I think that, John's guiding it overall and if he wants to take cap from today for tomorrow, he'll do so. It's a structure thing, I think, as much as anything for a cap guys.
Right. Hard to know what these guys are really doing. It's like trying to figure out what Grant Udinski does as the assistant quarterback coach.
Yeah.
Or chief of special projects.
Well, all I'm going to say is the Saints need to be firing their cap guy if it carries a lot of weight. You know what I'm saying? Right. That guy's horrible at his job.
Yeah. All to win 7 games every year.
That's right. All to just barely miss the playoffs. Eric Palmer, thank you for the $20 donation. I think this is over on your side. Thank you for the $20.
No, this is on your side.
Oh, well, thank you, Eric.
Yes. So I'm the paper clip.
Oh, that's right.
Clip icon.
Okay.
The guest is the paper clip. That's the way this works, I think.
That's right. All right. I'm a little slow here, Eric. Well, Eric, thank you for the $20 donation. That's really very kind of you for dropping that. He says, who would your guys' dream OC be?
I'm assuming he means from everybody. Like, if you could pick from anyone. Not just. Right.
All right. So he dropped us a 20. So let's give him 2 on this, Brendan. Give me your any OC right now Any OC in the league right now that's not a head coach, and then give me an all-time OC.
All-time OC. I mean, you're kind of obligated to go Bill Walsh almost, right?
You could. I mean, he did more of his better work he did good work with Paul Brown with the Bengals, but you would say more of his work was as a head coach than OC.
Okay, if you just want to go OC, maybe Holmgren, because he was the OC for a couple of Niners rings.
That was gonna be my pick. Yeah, that was gonna be my pick as an all-timer. And then who's our best OC in the sport right now? And I don't have, I'm thinking on this one too, Brendan. I don't have a great answer on this one either.
Isn't it Ben Johnson? Like, it's got to be Ben Johnson.
I guess it would be probably Ben. I'm just making sure there's not one other answer that we're thinking of here that's maybe somebody else.
I am a big fan of Liam Cohen in Tampa. I love what he's doing down there, but he's not better than Ben Johnson.
Yeah. Golly. Ben Johnson probably the best on this, to be honest with you, Eric.
Yeah, let me take a look at a little bit of a list here just to see if there's somebody I'm missing. I think that's probably it, though. I don't know how you could pick anybody else with the way things are right now. Like Joe Brady's doing good work.
I think I'd be very much, Eric, torn between that and I think still Arthur Smith is a guy that I still like a lot. I don't hold what he did with Pittsburgh and say, well, you didn't get the job done at Pittsburgh. I don't know if there's a lot of people getting the job done with Russ right now. You lost Fatano there, your left tackle. That hurt them throughout the year, not having that guy that they wanted to, slide into that spot. You had young linemen around that. Not a lot of playmakers on the outside at the receiver position outside of Pickens. Fairmouth is like average. I still think Smith is a very good offensive play caller in this league.
Yeah, he did the best that he could. He's got a quarterback. The only thing Russ can still do is throw 50-50 balls. That's his one identifiable skill now. He can't even outrun defensive linemen anymore.
It was like a quintessential game in that playoffs, wasn't it, Brendan, for a Russ game where it's like, okay, first half, nothing happens offensively, and then it's just bombs away into the second half, and you find some success at it, but you're just kind of scrambling to get from behind because it's not his fault the defense gave 300 yards rushing on the day. That's the deep, and they're beaten and battered. They didn't have Hayward, they didn't have Watt, but it was a bit of a quintessential kind of, modern Russ game a bit with that a little bit and how that played.
Right. And, he's worked with Justin Fields, who isn't a real quarterback. He's got Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder. Like it's hard. It's hard to find success with this stuff. When he had Tannehill, who was not even a great quarterback, he did amazing things.
He did. And I love his run game. I love his commitment to running the ball, Brendan. And I think that we are entering in a little bit of an era, even if it's just for a moment in this couple-year period right here, where running the ball is going to come a little bit more back to the forefront for a moment. I think offense and passing will find their way back around in the cylindrical side of this thing. But for a couple of years here now, I think it makes a lot of sense to be a team that is willing to run the ball and committed to running the ball.
So if this question was who would be your guys' dream OC, as in an OC that this team could hire this offseason, then my number one is Frank Reich. Again, I'm assuming that you could get him, which you maybe can't. Maybe he's just retired for good. But that's my number one if you could pick of all the theoretically available options.
Yeah, and I would probably I guess for me, Kubiak as far as the theoretical options, because none of the other guys that I was really looking at that, from a Dable to a McDaniel, really came out on the open market here. So there was just not a lot of feasible guys, even from a dream scenario here out there in the market at the moment.
Yeah, I'm really surprised Dable kept his job. I thought that, between his temperament and his results, there's no way.
I think the only reason that he's staying there has to do with the fact that I'm guessing he didn't push as hard for the Daniel Jones contract as the GM did, number one. And number two, the fact that Giants have spun through so many coaches in recent years. And he gets the benefit off that of like, oh, we've been just spinning and spinning and spinning. And maybe we should spin here, but we've done too much spinning. And so we have to give him another year because of the spin. It's not a good reasoning, right? It's not smart reasoning, but you could see a team being taken there that's just sort of desperate and they're just sort of shooting shots in the dark.
If you're going to do that, though, you're obligated to keep him in 2025, 2026, no matter what. Like they're probably going to win 5 games this year. And then do you just say, yeah, we're just going to keep him because Like, because if you're going to either fire him now or don't fire him next year, and I'll bet they'll fire him next year and nothing will make sense.
Yeah, maybe they didn't fire him this year, Brendan, because they wanted to fire him, but they didn't like the candidates that were out there. Maybe there'll be candidates that they actually like next year that, fit more to them, what they're looking for. But I think you're right. How do you bring him back this year and say, okay, this is your make or break year when you don't have a quarterback, when that team still looks very far away from a personnel standpoint to get it done? You do have to kind of give them the 2 years at that point if you would theoretically. But as we know, the NFL is not fair with that. And they'll be cold blood with it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that $20 donation. Very kind of you, man. Very kind of you. Phoebe More Seahawks with the $2 donation says, Ben Johnson is heating up with the Raiders. I know why.
Raiders are picking 6th in the draft. God, they're not really going to be able to get a quarterback this offseason, are they?
Maybe not. I was running mock draft scenario last night and just running a couple of full 2-round mocks with all the teams to kind of get an idea, Brendan, of what I was kind of seeing, and what I think. Let me see what you think, actually. Hold on. This might be a little bit fun. So maybe I shouldn't do this with it, but let's see here. I'll show you what I think that there's a chance here that we end up with a potential Cam Ward guy here. I'll show this if I can, so you can kind of see it. This is kind of cool. Okay, so wait, not the right one. Stay with me, Brendan. Stay with me here.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. So I had it going like this a little bit, running my scenario last night, where you actually then ended up with. Let me take this off too for a second. We'll get you back here. Feed me in a second. Where you do end up essentially at this point with Cam Ward going to 7th, which might allow the Raiders to have an opportunity. What do you think, by the way, on my mock there?
You mean from a Seahawks perspective or just overall?
Just overall, not a Seahawks perspective.
I love Abdul Carter. I do. I might. I don't know if I take him 1. I'd be close on it though. But I don't know if the rest of the league is there yet, man.
I don't know if on that either. I was drawn in a couple different ways with Tennessee. They could do Travis Hunter there as well, with it. But I was looking at quarterback, and I just wasn't as certain that, the Giants take Ward there. It certainly is possible that they make the jump there, but they have a long way to go. And I just kind of went back to it and went, well, I just kind of see it as the good chance he drifts, potentially drops through. So Raiders might have a chance to go there at it. I think that they're going to. Brady's got a lot of influence, what we're hearing, Brendan. So, he's coming in there and he's wielding the power we would think that he would as an even 10% owner in there. And so if they come in, they're going to, I think, build it right and build it properly. And they've got a lot of holes there. But I think there's a way. There doesn't seem to be as much of that consensus that I thought early on in this process with Cam and Shedeur, that there's no doubt you're going to see 2 of those guys taken in the top 5.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they drift both of them potentially in this draft a little bit, staying in the first round, but just maybe not as much in that top 5 range of things.
Yeah, and I think that's deserved. I don't think either guy's a super blue chipper.
No, I don't either. I think that the question marks are real there and valid. So Ben Johnson to the Raiders, I can kind of get it. It's a good spot for him, especially if he's really liking the thought. I mean, the draw there for Ben Johnson is Brady. Brady's not there. He's not going to the Raiders. So it's the understanding of I'm going to have a smart guy in the room that's going to understand what I'm going to need to get the job done. And he will give me those tools. I don't know if I like it as the best spot for Ben, though. I'll say that.
Yeah. The whole Brady thing right now makes me sick. I cannot believe he's gotten away with this.
What? With what?
He signs a $400 million contract to be a color commentator. And then he signs a contract with the Raiders that basically says I can't contact other teams and talk about football stuff with them at all because I'm the owner of the Raiders. Like that's part of him owning the Raiders. So all these guys, all these color commentators like Chris Collinsworth and Kirk Herbstreit, they're all constantly talking with these other teams. So they get interesting things to say during games. And Brady can't do that. So he just goes out there every play and he's like, oh, I give that throw about a C+. Oh, that guy hit that guy really hard. He's the worst announcer I've ever heard in my life. And he's making $400 million doing it. He is the biggest grifter I've ever seen in my life. I'm disgusted by what Brady got away with this offseason, man. It's so bad.
Well, and from his perspective, I never understood the color commentary thing because I always thought he'd be a guy that would be more ownership, general manager, going into kind of that, let your competitive stuff still be able to, itch gets scratched. And so I didn't quite understand him doing the color commentary thing. And I don't think he'll necessarily be long for the world in doing it, Brendan.
Yeah, he's terrible. I think he's worse than Jason Witten. And that's saying something. Jason Witten was terrible.
Yeah, I haven't watched a game with Tom, to your point, yet and gone, wow, what tremendous insight on this play or on that situation. For a guy that's played so much football as he has, you'd think there'd be some more kind of intricacies that he'd be getting into within the game rather than some of the generalities he covers when he does color commentate.
Yeah, well, you see, the Panthers have 2 timeouts left. Yeah, we know it's on the screen.
Appreciate you for that, Tom. That's that $400 million insight we're paying for. Yeah. Feed me. Thank you for another $2 donation. He says, because Brady said OC can also be the GM. That's why. Well, I guess that would make a little more sense that could be the draw there for Ben.
Wow. That would be, that's never happened before, has it?
Well, I think he said it confusingly, but what he meant was Ben Johnson be the head coach calling plays, but then he'd also be the general manager, I think is what he means by that.
I guess if that's what it takes to get him, I get it, but wow.
And that's what, to Brendan's point, that may be what this is, Feed Me, because like I was saying on it, I don't know if I'd be looking at the Raiders job as the best optimal job to go to. I know there's not a lot of great landing spaces. We'll say that this offseason is there, Brendan, where the jobs that are available aren't exactly like, yeah, I want to go to Chicago. That's where winners go. Hey, let me go to Jets. That's the place where you really get it done. So look, he's kind of like picking the best of bad options. And hey, if they give you the general manager, I would say that that's a mistake to Ben Johnson, though. If you give Ben Johnson, this is not going to work. Giving him general manager control as a first-time head coach. And he's the kind of guy who's got that hubris there. Which, did you hear the story, by the way, about the Washington situation with him? He wanted to go with Sam Howell.
I heard about. Yes, I saw a tweet about it earlier today. Yes.
Yeah, he wanted to go with Sam Howell, and Washington promptly hung up the phone and said, "Okay, we're going with Quinn, and we're drafting Jaden Daniels." So, interesting there. From if we're talking about him as a general manager, it's like that wasn't
not good.
It's not a good opening one salvo there. If I was hearing that from Brady's standpoint, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, best head coaching job might actually be Jacksonville, and that's not like you got that. What's the owner's name? Khan,
yeah,
that's not good.
You do get to decide if you fire your general manager or not.
Yeah.
So there is that if you get it. So that's a nice little carrot to walk into on the job, I suppose. Boy, just another just like, what are you doing, Khan? Did you see that interview with Khan?
Yeah, I did see that.
You got Balky standing there just looking awkward as hell as he's like, the next guy, if he doesn't want him here, Balky standing there wide-eyed going, what the hell, Khan? Throw me bus on the Nationals spotlight.
Yeah, I'm surprised that GM didn't get fired though. It's Balky, right?
Yep, Balky.
Yeah, I'm surprised he kept his job.
I am too. Well, I mean, he may not. That's that interview said. I mean, maybe the new coach comes in and goes, nah, I don't think I want that. Oh, excuse me. Chad Hart, thanks for another $5 donation. Says, Brando, I was just having a good laugh. Both you turkeys are great. Oh, I know you were, Chad. No, I know you were for sure, man. So, excuse me.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. I appreciate that.
Yeah, very kind of you to say, though, Chad. No, I knew you were. I know you're messing around there on that. So, I got to give a little shade to the retirees out there in Arizona. There's just so many of them. There's so many. Back in the day, you'd go through Mason, it would be nothing but purple hair. And I'm not talking about the Gen Z type here, Brendan. You know what I mean? Not talking about that. But thank you, Chad. Appreciate you. Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $2 donation. Any interest in Hawks for linebacker Jalen Walker in the first round?
I'm open to it. This is the guy who's like part edge, part linebacker, right?
Kind of, yeah. He's kind of Bruce. Yeah. Bruce Irvin's my comp.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I like it more if we either let Nwosu go or don't keep Ernest Jones. But I'm at least open to it. I'm not anti it. I think you can do better, personally.
Kevin, I do have a first round grade on Jalen. I think he's about my fourth edge in the class, if I'm not mistaken, on my current ranking. So I've got I've got Abdul Carter, I've got Michael Williams, James Pierce, and then I've got Walker as my next guy. He is a Bruce Irvin kind of comp. So like Brendan said, you can use him in a couple of different areas. He's not just an edge guy. He's also not the power edge guy, though, that I think potentially we might see McDonald really looking for this offseason, more than a guy like who's really twitchy and a shade undersized. I will say, though, Kevin, that when you look at recent first rounds and where we're picking, the value year in and year out seems to be right when you're at 18, 19, 20-ish, that there is going to be an edge guy there that's going to be very tantalizing on the value-based point of your board. So last year, Jared Verse, Chop Robinson, these were two guys that would have been, maybe very interesting for the Hawks where they were picking. Even the prior year, Will McDonald going to the Jets at about 20, same kind of situation where you've got a guy real hyper twitchy, bendy, first step quickness, traditional stuff you look for from the edge rushers and pass rushers. They bring that to the table, and the value is really nice there for where you land in the first round and pick them at that spot too. So it definitely lines up where it could be a possibility there with Walker for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to keep an open mind too. And Jalen Walker is a nice little player. I'd rather get Michael Williams from Georgia if we were going to get a linebacker from Georgia, but that might be hard to pull off.
Michael's my number 2 on my big board, Brendan. He's just behind Carter, and there's some times with it where I was pulled with him to put him above Carter because of just he's in that Georgia defense, man, where just because you don't have the high-end production doesn't mean that you aren't good. It's like they're so much about blitzing and running games up front that you can't just look at him like you would typically as like, well, does he got the 14, 15 sacks I'd like to see from the season like a Walker guy does? But he's a lot of fun, Brendan. And he's young, he's big, he's long. He's a little more to the traditional size mode of what I think McDonald would be looking for from that edge point. But
and
Walker's fun.
Pierce is your third?
Pierce is currently my third.
Okay.
It might adjust on that. Walker might end up taking him because Pierce did have a little bit of an underwhelming season, and I need to go back on the tape for him this year to see where he was at playing and play out, on a couple of other games. But liked what I saw from Pierce. Very athletic. He's I've got to Josh Allen Hines comp for Pierce, and then
Josh
Walker's
Allen Hines or Hines Allen. I can't remember.
Hines Allen, whichever it is. The hyphen. Josh the hyphen pass rusher.
Yeah.
Whatever you mean.
Yeah, he had to do something after he became by far the second most well-known Josh Allen in football.
I guess you do. I mean, I would have just gone for the 3-letter name because that'll stick in your head more than the hyphen does. The hyphen just gets you for Hines, Ward, Allen. What was this? Just do the JSWN or whatever. Go that route.
Yeah, exactly. It's like or do the Office Space thing, the Michael Bolton thing.
There we go. That's the way to do it too.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, I'm not changing my name.
I'm not related to him. I don't know him. It's got such great music. But thank you, Kevin. Appreciate you guys, all of it, for all the support and donations today. So, Brendan, we've gotten to the other side of this here. We've taken you guys through where the cuts are going to go down this offseason. I think these are all very feasible, very likely to play out. We came down to a final number for you guys of $65.8 million of cap space cleared up. Still with some extra levers that Brendan talked about, be it with an Uchenna that we kept and held on to, or a Williams if you want to base to bonus that thing later on in the year. You can still create cap space later, kind of trade deadline deals, but you've got $65.8 million in cap. You've signed Charles Cross to a contract extension. Plenty of room there to go do your normal order of business. Plenty of room there to go get hyper aggressive, right, Brendan? Team can do whatever they want to do. It just depends on what impels them. What is your motivation? How driven are you to get there to a contender by 2025?
There's no reason that you can't do it. Teams do it in this league all the time. This is a 10-win team from last year. This was a better than average team in 2024. That next step, it's not, a mile away. It's not, it's right in front of you, really. You just have to do the right things here. So, yeah, I think that the cap will be cleared if the team wants to, and I think there will be plenty of money to spend this offseason.
Exactly. So let's see what the Seattle does. They've got a lot of different modes they can go into this offseason, certainly, and recent history has told us that they will be relatively aggressive in these moments because they do believe themselves, I think, closer to contention than not. To Brendan's point on the 10-win season, helping you, of course, to maybe feel a little bit more stronger that you're there. But they do have the flexibility to do whatever they want. Don't let anybody out there tell you guys this offseason, well, we have no cap space, therefore we can't do anything and we're stuck. No, you can do stuff. Don't let the team get off the hook with that kind of excuse this offseason. If they're going to try to tell you, we want to be a contender, but we're also kind of limited by the cap space. We can only go this far to being a contender. That's not the case. That's a little bit more of taking that middle path, sitting on the fence, rather than picking a certain way that you go about your business for 2025 in the future. And that would not be encouraging to see if the team was to try to take that sort of, well, we're going to try a little bit, but I mean, we're also kind of, no, all in or not, go big or go home. That's the way the phrase goes, and it's for a reason.
Yeah. So next week, I think the show that makes sense to do is now talk about outgoing free agents, the guys who are not under contract going into 2025 for the Seahawks that we could choose to keep or not keep. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and maybe we'll have a new offensive coordinator to talk about in the when we get there as well. Maybe.
That would be nice. That would be very nice. Well, we've got one more donation here from Be Calm, See Clearly. Thank you for the double donation, Be Calm. I hope you feel better over the flu. And like I said, get the fluids, get that sleep. It says, do you guys like Caleb Downs? Go Bucks, go Hawks.
I haven't seen much Caleb Downs personally.
Yeah, so safety with the Ohio State Buckeyes. I have not had a chance to get too deep into him as of yet. Be calm, but I will get him on my list. Be calm. Check with me on my next live stream show that I do, and I will have taken a look at him for my scouting stuff. So I'm over. Yeah. I got over 100, Brendan. I cracked over 100 last night, so we're making progress here.
Yeah, and I think next week is the deadline to declare for the draft also. So next week we'll also pretty much know who's going to actually be available.
That's true too as well. So, and these guys go right down the last minute. Some of them. Yours just announced yesterday. So yeah. We're still getting some guys that even might sound like they're going back, but come in the draft. So that'll be a fun part to track. So thank you, Be Calm. Appreciate all the support, and check with me on next show. I'll let you know an update on Caleb and what I've got as far as a view for him. So next week, we will be looking at outgoing free agency with this team and who should be signed, who should not, who should they let walk. Compensatory game, Brendan. We're due to get potentially 2 to 3 compensatory picks. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit of a factor as well, though. If we create the cap space we created today, maybe not at all, because you might be spending on the open market in addition to that to offset whatever you lose. So once again, like with a lot of things with this team, a lot of different directions they can go, a lot of different options here on the table for our Hawks for how they can proceed.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, there's only really one big free agent impending. Everything else is going to be definitely stuff to talk about, but it's pretty smooth sailing, personally.
Yep, very, very much so. Nothing that's a real hand-wringing kind of decision on task with that, right? Most of the stuff is pretty straightforward and understandable in what you want to go do. And so you're in a good position there. You got some other tough decisions to make this offseason, Brendan, but that's not going to be, I think, one of the harder places for them to delve into. Matthew Clements has been a member on your side for 11 months, almost a year. Thank you for that, Matthew. In your guys' opinion, what is Spoon's ceiling?
I don't see why he can't be a top 2, top 3 corner in this league. Like, I don't know why he can't be, maybe not as good in coverage as Surtain, but overall he can be equivalent to a player like Surtain.
I come back to Matthew on this. It's a bit like Coach Carroll's evaluation of him when he came out. That didn't make a lot of sense to me at the time, but kind of makes more sense as I watch him play through on the years of this. And that is, he said, Troy Polamalu is my comp for Witherspoon. You go, well, that doesn't make sense, though, because Troy's a safety and Spoon's more of a slot. I think Brendan's right. The bottom line of it is that he'll be a top 3 type corner in the league, but it will not be by the traditional way of him being a Darrelle Revis outside, Revis Island, shut the guy down on the outside, do it. It's going to be by looking more like a Polamalu and how he runs around and flies around the field and what he does. And that's where the impact's really felt. So it's a non-traditional way, but the cumulative is still the same at the end of the day. Top 3 level corner play. It's just coming from a little bit of a different look than you'd normally see it from.
Yeah. I would, I think that's the right way to look at it. Or like a Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore. That's the other comp that some people make.
Kyle Hamilton's a little bit of another one. And Mike McDonald did say this year too with the Matthew on using him, and that there's so much that Witherspoon can do. He has so much in his bag that you have this tendency to have him do all of it rather than just kind of getting him more concentrated, as it felt like I think that McDonald was able to do as the year went along, and then to abuse him at his best. So some of that was learning the player a little bit, but McDonald's going to get the most out of this kid. He's a perfect coach to have this kind of player. And so whether it's outside, inside, wherever he's going to be at, you will feel Spoon's impact now and in the future. And one of our really unsung heroes this year in how he played versus, what he's going to get from a press standpoint.
Right. Agreed.
Ryan 3000. Thank you for the $5 donation. Ryan says, we have to keep Ernest Jones by any means possible or someone better. And if we don't, we go back to being terrible at defense. Thanks for everything. Well, appreciate you there, Ryan. Thank you for the donation. I would expect this deal is going to get done, Brendan, don't you?
Yeah, but you want to leave yourself a little bit of an out if he wants $20 million a year, right? If he wants like something like that, then you can say, hey, comp pick game, right?
Comp pick game's a potential here. Like I said, I think it's going to get hard if we're at that $65 million because you're probably going to sign some guys to flow it back the other way. Unless you don't create the levers and create the cap space like we're saying. I think the real nice indicator for you, Ryan, on this one, the light at the end of the tunnel on this one for a little bit of uncertainty as it stands right now, is that Ernest Jones said in that press conference, or not press, but he was asked at his locker room after the final game of the season, and he said, we're going to get a deal done. And players are told by their agents not to say that type of stuff. Players are told by their agents to keep a tight lipped and look, I love playing here. I'd love to come back. If everything aligns right, I would love to, this would be as good a place to be back as anywhere else. But, I'm due to be a free agent. I should have been paid this year. I didn't get paid this year. I had to play out in the 4th year of my rookie deal. I need to get paid now and I need to get paid right because I've had to wait a year. He didn't say that type of stuff. He said, no, I think we're going to get a deal done here. I know there's a pause in negotiations, but remember with Leonard Williams, with Noah Fant, both those two deals as in-house free agents didn't get done until right at the 25th hour, essentially, right before free agency started there, Ryan. So you might have to wait a little bit, but I do think when it's all said and done, you're going to get a deal done here for Ernest.
I actually think they didn't get signed till after free agency started on like that first day.
There we go.
Or legal tampering, which is a stupid phrase because like legal tampering starts in January, if we're being real. Like,
yeah. Agreed. Yeah, agreed. It begins very, even not earlier than that, I suppose, in some of these things. So, I think it gets done, Ryan. I think they find a good deal for both team and player on this one, but you do need a little bit of that motivation of the timeline pressing. And if we don't, both from both sides perspective, your deal's here or it's gone, or, hey, you get this discount or it's not a discount once we get to free agency. So it will probably get done, I would imagine. And if it doesn't, I would expect them to probably hammer it pretty hard. Maybe a guy you take in the second round of the draft, the kid out of UCLA. Have you seen this UCLA kid? Schwinger? I'll be interested to.
I'm not sure I have. Hold on. Let me check something here real quick. UCLA, you said?
Carson Schweisinger.
Schweisinger.
It's not a linebacker name, is it?
I have not seen. Okay, I see him on the database.
Yeah,
but I was not familiar with him. Wow, interesting.
He's rising. He's rising like Peyton Willis style last year. Not Peyton Willis, the Peyton kid that went to Pittsburgh. But
Peyton Wilson, Wilson.
Former walk-in, self-made player kind of guy. I was going to interested to see if you'd seen him because I like the Jihad kid out of Alabama a lot better. There's a lot more.
I like Campbell. Yeah, I do like Campbell.
Yeah, he reminds me of the kid out of Texas last year. You liked. I liked him too. Had a hell of a year for the Packers too. He had a great year for the Packers.
Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper. He reminds me of Cooper, just from a physical standpoint, and he's my favorite right now. But a lot of people like this Schweisinger kid, which hard for me to understand. Like former walk-in, how talented is he then at the point? It's like, is he kind of topped off? Is he kind of overachiever type who's gotten the most out? But a lot of people have him as LB1 on the inside in this draft, which I don't quite get. But
I'll try to talk myself into it. We'll see.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what you think when you're watching him. I just wasn't super blown away. There's some good stuff there, but you're just like, for the way people talk about as the number one versus this Campbell kid who's obviously got the talent. But thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the donation, and I do think you'll feel very happy to know that they're going to get this deal done. I would be shocked to not see it done. I'd say there's like 85% chance it gets done.
That's a pretty good number, I think.
That's a good number. It's because you can hope for in these kind of negotiations, I think. Well, folks, do me this favor if you could for me. Hit the like button, whether you're on my side or you're on Brendan's side watching this video. If you could as well, if you're not subbed up here to the Hawks Nest, get subbed up. If you're watching from Brendan's side, and if you're on my side, do please also get subbed up over to Seahawks, Brendan Nelson here on YouTube on his side as well. It is very helpful. It's free to do this on both ends. We really do appreciate it as we are trying to march and really keep kicking some butt here as we head into this offseason and keep this thing rolling. Thank you, Brendan, for doing this today. As always, man, I appreciate you guys. We will be keeping this Thursday show going throughout this off season here as we go through until we get to probably the June period where everything just goes completely dead silent.
Yeah.
But thanks, Brendan, for doing this, man.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week with some previews of in-house free agency here with your Seattle Seahawks, and we'll hopefully have some breaking news for you guys at that time with not breaking news, just some news with who is the new OC. I'm hopefully going to find out by that time. So until next time, folks, we will be back in just under a week, but we really do appreciate you watching. Thank you guys for all of the support in the chat. You guys are kind as ever on that side of it. Back in a week, but until then, please don't you ever forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.